The twin suns burned high over the desert city of Korath, turning the air into shimmering waves of heat. The streets were loud, filled with the calls of merchants, the bleating of pack animals, and the chatter of hundreds of voices bargaining. But under all that noise was something else, something quieter, a voice, a whisper. Lyra stood in the shadow of a crumbling wall, clutching the thin cloth around her body. It was the last thing she owned. Everything else was gone. Her food, her water, her small bag of tools, even the metal tags from her home colony. All I had were my clothes, she whispered to herself, as if saying it would make the truth hurt less. Her silver eyes scanned the marketplace. Food stalls lined the main road, bright baskets of fruit, steaming trays of spiced bread, and hanging racks of dried meat. The smell made her stomach twist with hunger. She hadn't eaten in 2 days, and her legs felt weaker with every step. She moved closer to a stall piled high with flatbread. The vendor, a large reptilian creature with rough green scales, was arranging the bread in neat stacks. Lyra's voice was soft but desperate. "How much for one?" she asked. The vendor's eyes slid over her. He could see she had no coins. His mouth curled in a slow, unpleasant smile. "No money, no trade, no food," he said. I have nothing left," Lyra admitted. Her fingers tightened on her cloth wrap. It was thin, frayed at the edges. "Only this." The reptilian's gaze narrowed. He knew what she meant. He had seen many like her, desperate refugees from other worlds, willing to give away their last dignity to survive. Around them, the crowd moved on, not caring, not noticing. The vendor leaned forward. "Give me that, and I will give you bread. Enough for today." Lyra froze. Her homeworld had been destroyed by raiders. She had fled with her family, but they had been separated in the chaos. Weeks of travel had brought her here to Korath, where strangers ruled the streets. And now, she was faced with this, trading away the last thing she owned for a few bites of food. Her hands trembled. She looked at the bread, then at the vendor's cold eyes. Her throat tightened. Before she could speak, a voice came from behind. "Is this how you treat the hungry?" The vendor turned, annoyed, and Lyra looked too. A human man stood there, tall, with sun-browned skin and short dark hair. His clothes were dusty from travel, but his eyes were sharp and steady. He had the stance of someone who had seen trouble before and was ready for it. "This is my stall," the reptilian said. "I trade as I choose." The human stepped closer. "And I choose to buy that bread." He reached into a pouch and pulled out a handful of silver trade coins. They clinked together as he set them on the counter. The vendor's eyes flicked from the coins to the man's face. Slowly, he took the money and slid a bundle of bread forward. The human picked it up, turned, and held it out to Lyra. "Here," he said simply. Lyra stared at him, unsure. I can't pay you." "Didn't ask you to," the man replied. "Eat." Her stomach growled loudly, almost answering for her. She took the bread, hands shaking, and tore off a small piece. The warm, soft taste filled her mouth, and for the first time in days, she felt a flicker of life inside her. The human watched her for a moment. "What's your name?" "Lyra," she said between bites. "I'm Cade," he replied. "And you're not safe here." Lyra's chewing slowed. "Nowhere is safe," she said quietly. Cade glanced around. The market was busy, but he noticed a pair of figures watching from across the street, shadows under hoods. He didn't like the way they stood still while everyone else moved. "You're being followed," he said. Lyra's eyes widened. "Who?" "Trouble," Cade said. "Come on!" She hesitated, then stepped after him. He moved quickly, weaving through the crowd, keeping her close. The sounds of the market faded as they turned down a narrow side street lined with broken walls and empty doorways. The air here was cooler, out of the sun's glare. Why did you help me? She asked. Because you needed help, he said. And because someone needs to start reminding this place what it means to be decent. Lyra looked at him. In his voice was something she hadn't heard in a long time. Kindness without price. But behind them, footsteps echoed. Cade's eyes narrowed. Stay behind me, he said. The two hooded figures from the market stepped into view, blocking the alley. Their voices were low, their language one Lyra didn't understand. But their tone was clear. They meant harm. Cade's hand went to the small metal baton at his belt. Looks like we've got company. The larger of the two stepped forward, pointing at Lyra. He said something sharp and angry. They want you, Cade said over his shoulder. Why? Lyra's breath quickened. I don't know. Maybe the raiders put a price on me. Cade frowned. That's not good. The smaller hooded figure pulled a short blade from under his cloak. The alley felt tighter now, the air heavy with danger. Run, Cade told her. But run! His voice was firm. She turned and ran, clutching the bread to her chest. Behind her, she heard the clash of boots on stone, the sound of Cade moving fast, the sharp crack of his baton against metal. Voices shouted. Something hit the wall hard. Lyra didn't stop until she reached the end of the alley, bursting out into the sunlight. Her heart pounded, her mind racing. She looked back once, just in time to see Cade emerge from the shadows, breathing hard but still on his feet. You're fast, he said, catching up. You're still alive, she said, almost smiling. For now, he replied. Come, on. We need to get out of the city. Where will we go? She asked. Cade's eyes looked past her, toward the distant hills beyond the desert. Somewhere safer than here. But even as they walked, Lyra knew safety was a rare thing in this galaxy, and danger had a way of following her. The desert stretched out before them like a great golden ocean. Waves of sand rolled under the twin suns, and heat shimmered in the distance. Lyra walked beside Cade, her legs still weak from hunger, but her mind sharper now. She kept glancing, over her shoulder, half expecting the hooded figures to appear again. They won't follow us this far, Cade said, noticing her worry. Not yet, anyway. You seem sure, Lyra replied. I've been in Korath long enough to know how hunters work, Cade said. They wait until you're tired when the heat breaks you. Then they strike. Lyra hugged the bread bundle closer. She took small bites, careful not to eat too fast. Why are they hunting me? She asked. That's what I'd like to know, Cade said. You said maybe the raiders put a price on you? She nodded slowly. I don't know why. I was just a worker. My family lived in the hills of Arelon, far from the capital. When the raiders came, they took people, burned homes. We ran. I thought I was just one more refugee. But someone wants you enough to send trackers, Cade said, thinking out loud. That means you're worth something to them, not just a worker. Lyra shook her head. I don't have anything, just my clothes. That's all I had. Her voice trailed off. Cade didn't push further, but his mind was working. He had seen bounty hunts before. People were rarely hunted for nothing. They walked until the city's walls were far behind them. The wind picked up, carrying fine sand that stung their skin. By midday, they reached the edge of a rocky canyon where the heat was less intense. Cade led her down a narrow path until they found a small cave. This will do for now, Cade said, setting down his pack. We'll rest here until night. It's cooler to travel when the suns are down. Lyra sat on the ground, leaning against the stone wall. The shade felt like a gift. You live out here? Sometimes, Cade said. I trade between settlements, carry messages. sometimes help ships find their way through the desert storms. Korath isn't friendly to outsiders, so I don't stay in one place too long." Lyra studied him for a moment. "So why help me? You could have just walked past." Cade shrugged. "Because I've seen what happens to people when no one steps in, and because you looked like you needed someone to remember you're more than what they think you're worth." She blinked, surprised by his words. "Where I'm from, people stopped thinking like that a long time ago, before Cade could answer." A faint whine reached their ears. It wasn't the wind. It was sharper, mechanical. Cade's eyes narrowed. "Stay here." He moved to the cave entrance and peered out. In the distance, a small black shape floated low over the sand, gliding toward the canyon. "A hunter drone! They're tracking us already," he said. Lyra's breath caught. "How? We left the city hours ago." "They probably tagged you," Cade said quickly. He stepped forward and scanned her with a small handheld device. A faint beeping came from somewhere near her shoulder. "There," he said, pointing to a tiny metal chip barely visible under her skin. "They marked you." Lyra's eyes widened. "I didn't even know." Cade pulled a small tool from his pack. "Hold still." She winced as he worked, but in less than a minute the chip was out. Cade dropped it to the ground and crushed it under his boot. The beeping stopped. "That'll buy us some time," he said. The drone in the distance hovered, paused, then began moving in a wider circle, searching. Cade motioned for Lyra to follow. They left the cave and climbed deeper into the canyon, using the shadows to stay hidden. By nightfall, the temperature dropped sharply. Stars filled the sky, cold and bright against the black. Cade led Lyra to a cluster of rocks where he built a small smokeless fire. As they sat, Lyra spoke again. "The raiders, when they came, they weren't just taking people. They were looking for something. They searched every home, every mine. My father worked in the mines. He found something once, a crystal. It glowed, even in the dark. He told me never to speak of it." Cade looked at her sharply. "What happened to it?" "I don't know. After the attack, I never saw him again. But a week before the raiders came, my father gave me a small pendant, said it would keep me safe. I wore it under my clothes." Her hand went to her neck, but found nothing. Her face paled. "It's gone," she whispered. "It must have been taken when I was captured, before I escaped." Cade leaned forward. "If that crystal was inside the pendant, and if it's as rare as I think it might be, that's your price. They don't care about you, Lyra. They care about what you had." "But I don't have it anymore," she said. "They don't know that," Cade replied. "And until they're sure, they'll keep hunting you." Lyra's hands trembled. "Then what do we do?" Cade stared into the fire. "We find out where that pendant is, and we make sure the people who have it don't get to use it." The night was quiet for a while, just the crackle of the fire and the distant howl of a desert wind. But in the dark, far above, a small glint of metal moved across the stars, a larger hunter craft, scanning the sands below. Lyra didn't see it. Cade did. "We move at dawn," he said, his voice low. "And we don't stop until we're ahead of them." The suns were still low when Cade and Lyra left the canyon. The air was cool, but Cade knew it would not last. By midday, the heat would return, and with it, the danger. They moved quickly across the open sands, following a narrow trail only Cade seemed to know. Lyra tried to keep up, her feet sinking into the soft ground. The bread was gone now, and though she didn't complain, Cade could see she was tiring. "You walk like someone who's never had to cross a desert," he said. "I haven't," Lyra admitted. "Where I'm from, the land is green. The air is cool. This heat feels like it's trying to burn me away." Cade gave a faint smile. "The desert does that to everyone, but it also hides you if you know how to move." They climbed a ridge of sand and stone. From the top, Cade scanned the horizon. At first, he saw nothing but endless dunes. Then a dark speck appeared far behind them, moving fast. "They've found us again," he said. Lyra turned, eyes wide. "The drone?" "Bigger," Cade said. "That's a skimmer. Two-seater fast enough to catch us before sundown." Her breath caught. "What do we do?" Cade's eyes stayed on the horizon. "We take a different path." He led her down the far side of the ridge, into a narrow gully where high stone walls rose on either side. The air here was cooler, but the path was uneven and rocky. Lyra stumbled more than once, but Cade kept pulling her forward. By midday, they reached an outcropping of rock shaped like a jagged tooth. Cade motioned for her to rest in its shadow. "They'll expect us to keep moving in a straight line," he said. "Instead, we'll circle west. There's an old trading post there, abandoned now, but it still has shelter." Lyra drank the last of her water and nodded. She trusted his words, though the fear in her stomach didn't fade. The afternoon passed slowly. They climbed over stones, slipped through narrow cracks in the canyon walls, and crossed dry riverbeds where the sand was soft and treacherous. At one point, Cade stopped and crouched low. Voices. Lyra froze, straining to hear. The sound came from just ahead, a deep, growling language she didn't understand. Cade crept forward and peeked around a rock. Two figures stood near a broken wagon, their backs to him. Both wore dark armor and carried long rifles, bounty hunters. Cade slipped back to Lyra. "We can't go around without being seen," he whispered. "So we wait." They crouched in the shadows as the hunters talked. After a few minutes, one of them pointed toward the sky. Lyra followed the gesture and saw it. A hunter drone, circling above the canyon. Her stomach tightened. The hunters began to move, heading in the same direction Cade and Lyra had been going. "They're tracking our trail," Cade said. "We need to leave now." He led her in the opposite direction, moving as quickly and quietly as possible. The canyon narrowed again until they reached a point where the walls were too steep to climb. Cade scanned the stone. "There's a crack." "Here," he said, pointing to a narrow opening just wide enough for them to slip through. "It'll take us into the upper canyon." They squeezed inside, the stones scraping against their arms. The passage twisted sharply, then opened onto a high ledge overlooking the desert. From here, they could see the skimmer clearly, a sleek craft gliding low over the sand, its engines whispering in the hot air. "They're close," Lyra said. "Too close," Cade agreed. He scanned the ledge and spotted a pile of loose rocks. "Help me," he said. Together, they pushed the rocks to the edge. When the skimmer came near, Cade shoved the pile over. The stones tumbled down, striking the sand. Just in front of the craft, the skimmer swerved sharply, engines roaring. Dust exploded into the air, covering the ledge. Cade grabbed Lyra's hand. "Go!" They ran along the ridge, using the dust cloud as cover. Below, the skimmer steadied and began to turn, engines building speed again. Cade's jaw tightened. "We can't outrun them forever." They reached the far end of the ridge and scrambled down a steep slope into a dry basin. The ground here was cracked and white, like the bottom of an ancient lake. Heat shimmered above it, making the air dance. In the middle of the basin stood the remains of a building, its walls broken, roof half collapsed. Cade led Lyra inside. "This is the trading post?" she asked. "What's left of it," he said. "But it'll give us a chance to rest and plan." He searched the room, finding an old storage crate. Inside were a few dusty water flasks and a roll of cloth. He handed her one of the flasks. "Small sips," he said. "We don't know when we'll find more." Lyra drank slowly. "Do you think they'll stop hunting me if I tell them I don't have the pendant?" Cade shook his head. "Hunters don't stop until they're sure. And right now, they think you're worth more alive than dead. That's good for us." She frowned. Good? It means they won't shoot first, Cade said. At least, not until they get desperate. Outside, the low hum of engines grew louder again. The skimmer was circling the basin now, looking for movement. Cade crouched by the broken wall, watching. When they land, they'll split up. One will search the building. That's when we move. Lyra's hands trembled. And if they catch us? Cade glanced back at her, his eyes steady. Then I make sure you get away, no matter what. She wanted to argue, to say they should both escape together, but the words stuck in her throat. The truth was, she had no way to fight them. Without Cade, she wouldn't last an hour. The sound of the skimmer's engines changed. It was landing. Cade moved quickly, checking his baton and the small knife strapped to his boot. When I tell you, run out the back. Head for the rocks on the far side. Lyra nodded, her heart pounding. Boots crunched on the sand outside. Shadows moved across the doorway. A low voice spoke in the growling language again. Cade met her eyes. Now, she ran. The back wall of the building had a gap just wide enough to squeeze through. She darted into the open, sand flying under her feet. Behind her, she heard a shout, and then the sharp crack of Cade's baton hitting armor. She didn't look back. Lyra ran through the cracked basin, sand burning beneath her bare feet. The ruined trading post disappeared behind her, swallowed by the dust of her hurried steps. The wind stung her eyes, but she didn't stop. She remembered Cade's words. Head for the rocks on the far side. She glanced back, half expecting to see the hunters, but the skimmer hovered just above the ruins, searching. Its engines roared like a metal beast. Lyra's stomach tightened with fear, but she forced herself to keep moving. Every step was a test of endurance. Behind her, inside the trading post, Cade's fight had begun. The two armored bounty hunters moved cautiously, rifles ready, but Cade was faster than they expected. His baton cracked against metal, sparks flying. He ducked and rolled, using the broken walls for cover, and his knife flashed in his hand as he kept them off balance. Where is she? One growled. Check the exits, the other shouted. Cade moved to the doorway, striking the nearest hunter with a quick swing. The man stumbled, giving Cade enough time to slip past the remaining obstacles. Outside, the wind carried the distant echo of the skimmer's engines. Meanwhile, Lyra had reached the edge of the basin, where jagged rocks jutted up like teeth from the sand. She scrambled up, slipping once but catching herself on a stone. Her legs burned, but she climbed higher. From this vantage point, she could see the desert stretching endlessly in all directions. There was no clear path, only a landscape of golden, waves and distant mountains. Cade appeared behind her suddenly, panting but alive. Good. You made it, he said. Did you? Lyra started, but Cade waved her off. No time. They're coming. The hunters emerged from the ruins, one holding his rifle high, scanning for movement. The skimmer touched down carefully, near the trading post, its engines throwing up sand in a swirling cloud. Lyra's heart raced. She could feel the tension building in the desert around them. We need to move, Cade said, scanning the horizon. I know a place, a hidden canyon about 10 miles east. It's narrow, covered by rock formations. They won't see us if we keep low. Lyra nodded. She followed him down the rocky slope, careful not to make noise. Each step was a struggle, but Cade's calm determination gave her courage. By midday, the sun was high. The desert's heat pressed down on them, and sweat ran down Lyra's back. Cade paused and crouched behind a stone. Rest, drink, he said, handing her a small water flask. She took a sip, feeling the cool liquid revive her slightly. How far? She asked. Halfway there. But we're not safe until we reach the canyon. They have drones, skimmers, trackers, everything. And they'll keep coming until they find the pendant, or until they're sure you're worthless. Lyra swallowed hard. Worthless, she whispered. Not you, Cade said firmly. Them, They think the pendant is important. That's why they're hunting you. But I promise we'll get ahead of them." They moved again, keeping low in the heat waves. By late afternoon, the hidden canyon came into view. Its entrance was narrow, almost invisible from the desert floor. Cade led her inside, careful to stay out of sight. The canyon walls were high, casting deep shadows. The air was cooler, and small plants clung to the cracks in the stone. For the first time since, leaving Korath, Lyra felt safe. But she knew it was temporary. Cade dropped his pack and pulled out a small, worn map. "We'll stay here for a while, rest, plan, and then move forward. They'll search for us tonight, but these walls will hide us." Lyra sank against a stone, breathing heavily. "Why are you helping me? You don't owe me anything." Cade shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe I just know what it's like to be hunted. I've seen too many die because no one stepped in. You don't have to repay me, but you do have to survive. That's enough." She looked at him, studying the lines of his sunburned face and the steady determination in his eyes. Somehow she believed him. Somehow she knew he would keep his promise. Night fell quickly in the canyon. The stars shone bright against the black sky, and a cool wind whispered through the rocks. Lyra and Cade made a small camp, using some of the cloth from his pack to make a lean shelter. They ate a small meal of dried fruit Cade had carried, and Lyra felt her strength returning. But the night was not peaceful. From above, faint lights glimmered, hunter drones scanning the desert. They moved slowly, unaware of the hidden canyon below. Cade watched them, silent and calculating. "They're close," he said softly. "But they won't find us here, not unless we make a mistake." Lyra nodded, hugging her knees. "I never wanted this, all this danger." Cade looked at her, his voice calm. "None of us choose what happens, but we can choose how we respond. And right now we respond by staying alive, staying smart, and keeping one step ahead." She believed him, even though fear still lingered in her chest. She could feel it, a tight knot that wouldn't leave, but also something else. Hope. The human who had stepped in at the market, the one who saved her life, was now her shield and guide in this hostile desert. Hours passed, and the canyon remained quiet. Lyra tried to sleep, but her mind raced with thoughts of the pendant, the raiders, and what the future might hold. Cade, sitting across from her, kept watch, baton in hand, eyes scanning the dark entrance. Somewhere in the distance, a lone howl echoed. Maybe an animal. Maybe a warning. Lyra didn't know, but she knew this. She was not alone anymore. And, together, they would face whatever was coming. The desert night stretched long and silent, a temporary reprieve before the next challenge. But in the heart of the canyon, Lyra felt a spark of courage. For the first time since her world had burned, she felt that survival was possible, and with Cade at her side, she was ready to fight for it. The sun rose slowly over the canyon, casting long shadows across the jagged rocks. Lyra stirred, stretching her aching limbs, and reached for the small bundle of cloth she used as a pillow. The desert night had been cold, but safe. At least, for now. Cade was already awake, scanning the canyon entrance. His eyes followed the rising sun, calculating angles and light. He turned to Lyra. "Sleep well?" he asked. "Not really," she admitted. "I keep thinking about them. The hunters, the skimmer." Cade nodded. "They're persistent, but we're smarter. That's what matters." Lyra ate a small portion of dried fruit and drank from the remaining water. Every sip reminded her how close she had come to exhaustion yesterday. She had survived by sheer luck and Cade's intervention. "Do you think they know about the pendant?" she asked softly. "They might," Cade replied. "But we can't let that fear control. Us. Right now, we focus on moving forward and staying ahead. Later, we deal with the rest. The canyon was narrow, twisting, and uneven. As they moved, Cade taught her how to use the shadows to stay hidden. Lyra learned quickly, ducking behind stones, blending with the rock walls, and stepping lightly over loose gravel. For the first time, she felt capable, able to survive this desert if she kept her wits. Suddenly, a low hum echoed through the canyon. Lyra froze. Cade signaled for her to crouch. Above them, a faint glint of metal reflected the morning sun. A drone. They found our trail again. Cade whispered. Stay. Close! The drone hovered silently, scanning the ground. Lyra held her breath, her hands clammy. She had never been hunted like this before. Never had she needed to think so fast to survive. Cade guided her into a side crevice, hidden from view. The drone passed overhead, its sensors sweeping the canyon floor. Lyra could hear its mechanical hum fading as it continued on. Close call, Cade muttered. We need to move faster. They pressed on, using the canyon's twists and shadows as cover. By midday, they reached a wide plateau overlooking the desert. From here, the old desert highway stretched toward distant mountains. Cade paused, scanning the horizon. See those? He asked, pointing. Lyra squinted and saw faint clouds of dust rising far away. Hunters on skimmers. They've split up looking for us. If we're lucky, we can outrun them by heading toward the cliffs. Lyra's legs ached, but she nodded. Her fear was still present, but it was balanced now with determination. She wasn't just running anymore, she was fighting to survive. They started descending the rocky slope toward the highway, careful to move quickly, but quietly. Suddenly, the ground trembled under them. Lyra stumbled. What now? She whispered. Sand. Shift, Cade said. We're on loose ground. Step carefully. Lyra followed his lead, navigating over jagged stones and patches of shifting sand. They moved in silence, only the sound of their breathing and soft steps against the earth. Suddenly, a sharp shout echoed from the distance. Lyra's stomach sank. The hunters had spotted them. Skimmers roared closer, engines cutting through the air. Run! Cade shouted. Lyra pushed herself forward, her muscles burning. Cade was beside her, guiding her through the rocks. The skimmers hovered close, the hunters firing short pulses of energy. Sparks bounced off the canyon walls. Lyra ducked instinctively, her heart pounding. She saw a narrow tunnel leading into a rocky outcrop. There! She shouted. Cade nodded. They dove into the tunnel, the rocks shielding them from the skimmers' sensors. Inside, the air was cooler, the shadows deep. Lyra collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath. You did well, Cade said, crouching beside her. Most wouldn't have made it this far. Lyra looked at him, sweat on her brow. I'm scared, she admitted. Cade smiled faintly. Good. That means you're alive. Fear keeps you alert. Use it, not against yourself. They rested for a few minutes. Outside, the desert wind howled, carrying the distant sounds of engines and footsteps. Lyra realized just how close the hunters had been. We can't stay here. Long, Cade said. They'll search the tunnel soon. We need to move toward the mountains. There's an abandoned signal tower. We can hide there, plan our next move. They climbed out of the tunnel, keeping low and moving quickly. The desert seemed endless, but the thought of reaching the mountains gave Lyra strength. Every step was painful, but she pushed herself, trusting Cade's guidance. As they neared the plateau leading to the mountains, Cade paused, pointing to a distant glint. There. That's the pendant. I can see it in their possession. The hunters are carrying it with them. Lyra's eyes widened. It's real? Yes, Cade said. And now we know why they're after you. That pendant is important, powerful, and rare, but it's small. That's our advantage. If we move carefully, we can get it back. Lyra felt a mix of fear and hope. The pendant had cost her everything, her family, her home, her peace. But it was not lost to the hunters yet. With Cade's help, she had a chance to reclaim it. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the desert. The skimmers were back, hovering near the plateau's edge. Cade whispered a plan. "We wait until nightfall," he said. "Then we move under the cover of darkness. They won't see us if we stay low and stick to the rocks. The pendant is our goal, but first we survive." Lyra nodded. Her fear remained, but it was tempered by determination. She had survived the city, the hunters, the desert, and now, with Cade beside her, she would face the final challenge. The night promised danger, but also opportunity. And for the first time in weeks, Lyra believed they could win. Night fell over the desert like a black curtain. The air cooled, but the shadows grew longer, stretching across the rocky plateau. Lyra crouched beside Cade, her hands gripping the edges of a large stone. The skimmers and hunters were nearby, just beyond the ridge. The glint of the pendant caught her eye. It hung from a small chain around the neck of one of the hunters. "It's close," Cade whispered, "but we can't rush. One wrong move, and it's over." Lyra nodded, trying to calm the rapid beat of her heart. She had survived so much already, but this felt different. The pendant wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of her past, her family, and everything she had lost. Cade pointed to a narrow path of rocks leading down toward the hunter's position. "We'll move quietly, one step at a time. Stay low. Follow my lead." They crept forward, every movement measured. The desert floor crunched softly beneath their feet, but the wind carried their sound away. Lyra's eyes darted constantly, tracking the hunter's movements. The glow from the pendant shone faintly in the moonlight, confirming it was real. As they reached the edge of the path, Cade signaled her to wait. He pulled a small mirror from his pack, angling it to reflect the light at the hunters' faces. One hunter's eyes flicked toward the reflection, and he moved slightly, distracted. "Now," Cade whispered. They darted across the open space, landing behind a boulder just steps from the hunter carrying the pendant. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Her fingers itched to grab it, but Cade shook his head slightly. Patience. The hunters were close, talking quietly in their growling language. One adjusted the strap of his rifle, the other checking the pendant. Lyra's pulse raced. Every second felt like an hour. Cade tapped her shoulder. "On 3, 1, 2, 3, they sprang forward. Cade tackled the closest hunter to the ground, baton swinging. Sparks flew as it struck metal. Lyra moved quickly, snatching the pendant from the hunter's neck. She held it tight, feeling the warmth of its glow against her palm. Relief and determination surged through her. The second hunter raised his rifle, but Cade rolled, striking the weapon aside and knocking the hunter off balance. Lyra ducked behind a boulder, clutching the pendant. "Keep it safe," Cade shouted. "We move. Now!" They ran, zigzagging through the rocks. The skimmer's engines hummed, their lights sweeping across the desert, but the darkness and the rocky terrain hid them. Lyra's legs burned, but adrenaline kept her going. Every step brought her closer to survival, closer to reclaiming what she had lost. Finally, they reached a narrow canyon path leading toward a hidden valley. Cade motioned for her to stop and catch her breath. "You okay?" he asked. I think so," Lyra said, holding the pendant close. "It's really mine again." Cade nodded. "Good, but we're not safe yet. We need to decide what to do with it. The hunters will come back stronger. If we just keep it, they'll never stop." Lyra stared at the pendant. Its glow reminded her of her family, of her home, of the life she had lost. We could hide it," she said. "Somewhere no one will ever find it." "Yes," Cade said, "or we could use it carefully. But first, we survive. Then we decide." They rested briefly, listening to the distant hum of engines and the desert wind. Lyra realized something important. It wasn't just the pendant that mattered. It was courage, cleverness, and human determination, the ability to keep moving forward even when everything seemed lost. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" Cade asked, curiosity in his eyes. "For not letting me give up, for stepping in when I had nothing, for saving me." Cade smiled faintly. "That's what people do. We help when it matters." They set off again, moving quietly through the canyon. The hunters would not give up easily, but the desert was wide, and Cade knew the hidden valleys and paths few could follow. Hours later, they reached a small plateau overlooking a green oasis, rare water and plants in the middle of the desert. Lyra's eyes widened. Life existed here, untouched by raiders or hunters. "This will do for now," Cade said. "We rest, plan, and prepare for the next move. The pendant is safe with you. No one will take it from us tonight." Lyra held it in her hands, feeling a mixture of relief and responsibility. She realized that her journey was not just about survival. It was about proving that humans, even alone and powerless, could rise above fear, fight back, and protect what mattered. As night settled, she lay beside Cade, looking at the stars. For the first time since the attack on her home, she felt hope. The desert was harsh and unforgiving, but humans had something the hunters could never understand: determination, ingenuity, and the courage to step in when it mattered most. In the distance, the faint glow of the skimmers faded. They had not given up, but for tonight, Lyra and Cade were safe. Tomorrow, they would continue the journey, not just to hide the pendant, but to reclaim her life and honor her family's memory. Lyra whispered to herself, clutching the pendant close. "All I had were my clothes, but now I have hope too." Cade glanced at her and smiled, and together, we'll make sure hope lasts longer than fear. The stars above twinkled like distant fires, and in the quiet desert night, two humans, one protector, one survivor, sat together, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey had been harsh, the dangers relentless, but humanity had proven once again that courage, ingenuity, and determination could overcome even the most impossible odds. For Lyra, the future was no longer just about survival. It was about thriving, protecting what mattered, and proving that humans could rise above any threat. The pendant was more than an object. It was a symbol of hope, strength, and the unbreakable human spirit. And in the heart of the desert, with the stars above and the sand stretching endlessly, they both knew this was only the beginning.